The first photo the investigator sent me was my wife at a blackjack table, and the man with his arm across the back of her chair was her ex-husband. I paid for that photo because of a letter. A casino mailed that letter to my house in January, and I was never supposed to be the one who opened it. For 8 years, my wife got to our mailbox first, every single day, and I thought it was a habit. It was a system. She was cheating, and the man she was cheating with was the one man I had spent our whole marriage being told I never had to worry about. And the same casino that kept their secret is the reason a judge handed me the house. I am 56 years old, and I am going to lay this out in the order it happened to me, because the order is the whole story. We were both on our second marriage. When we met, she was about a year out of a bad divorce, and her little boy was still riding in a car seat. He is 12 now. I raised that boy from the age of 4, and I want that said before anything else, because he matters more to me than most of what comes next. Her first marriage was a wreck, and she never hid why. Her ex-husband gambled, not a scratch ticket at the gas station, casinos, whole weekends, money gone that was supposed to be the house payment. On our third date, she told me she had left that marriage with a toddler on her hip, a car she could barely make the payment on, and one rule: she would never set foot in a casino again as long as she lived. Hold on to that rule, because this whole story is about the day it broke. We got married 18 months after we met, 8 years, and I will not sit here and tell you they were bad years, because they were not. The boy's father had him every other weekend, plus Wednesday nights, and I will give him this much: he showed up for every single one, clean cut, on time, polite at the curb. Everybody who knew him said the same thing, that he had straightened his life out after the divorce. I must have shaken his hand 100 times over years of pickups and drop-offs. Now, my wife ran her life on routines, and 3 of them matter here. She did the mail. Every day, no matter the weather, she walked out and got it before I ever thought about it. And on days I beat her home, she would still go through the stack herself on the hall table. I thought it was one of the small ways she took care of the house. Second, every other Monday she had dinner with her girlfriends, and she was home by 10:30 like clockwork. Third, one Saturday a month she spent the day at her sister's, and about half the time the plan ran late, and she stayed the night there. None of that is strange. Married people have routines, and hers made the house run. I never gave one bit of it a second thought, one more piece, because the money part decides how this ends. We kept our pay separate and went halves on every bill, because we had both been burned once, and neither of us ever wanted to fight about money again. The house was in both names, but the taxes were mine. Every January, one drawer of my desk gets emptied out, and every piece of paper that comes into that house with the word tax on it goes straight in it, hers and mine, no questions asked. This January, my wife caught the flu, the real thing, a fever over 102, a doctor visit, 4 days flat on her back in the bedroom with the door shut, and for 4 straight days, the mail stopped with me, which had not happened one time in our marriage. Day 1 was bills. Day 2 was nothing. Day 3, there was a windowed envelope with her name on it, and the return address was a casino about 50 minutes south of our house. I stood right there at the mailbox and looked at that envelope for a solid minute. I was not suspicious yet, and that is the flat truth. My first thought was junk mail, because those places buy mailing lists and everybody gets their flyers. But flyers do not come in windowed envelopes. Through the little window on the front, you could see the corner of a form with boxes on it and small print, and one word that jumped out: tax. Tax goes in the drawer. That has been the rule of my house since we moved in, and that rule is the only reason I opened my wife's mail. Inside was a single page. It is called a W-2G. And before that afternoon, I did not know the form existed. Across the top, it says certain gambling winnings. It had my wife's full legal name. It had an account number from the casino's rewards club, the card they swipe every time you sit down to play, and it had a jackpot on it, $1,800, paid out on a slot machine on a Saturday in the middle of October. I stood there and checked the date again and again. Then I opened the calendar on my phone because I already had a bad feeling about that weekend, and the feeling was right. That Saturday in October, my wife was 3 states away at a lake house with her old college roommate. That trip happens every fall. She had made it every year we were married, and she came home that Sunday with a jar of apple butter from some farm stand and a story about the roommate's new dock. So no, I did not think affair, and I did not even think liar. I thought the casino had made a mistake. I thought somebody typed the wrong name into a computer, or somebody had stolen her identity, and I actually felt bad for her because my wife was the last person on earth who would want mail from a casino. I am telling you exactly what I told myself because I know how it sounds now. But I did not call the casino, and I did not walk down the hall and ask her. I folded that form in half and put it in the glove box of my old diesel instead of the tax drawer, and then I did the thing that ended up saving me. I said nothing, and I watched. The fever broke that weekend. The first morning she was up, still coughing. Before breakfast, she put a coat on over her robe and walked out to the mailbox in the January cold. Then she came inside and went through the 4 days of mail I had stacked on the hall table, piece by piece, twice. Then she looked over at me and asked if this was everything. 4 days of mail, and my wife wanted to know if this was everything. I told her some flyers had gone in the recycling. She went through the recycling. I leaned in the doorway of the den and watched my sick wife dig through a recycling bin, and I let her dig. I found out later how that form works, and this part right here is the whole trick. When a slot machine pays out $1,200 or more, the casino hands you a tax slip right there on the floor, and then every January her casino mails a copy to the address on the rewards account, whether you want one or not. She got her slip at the machine back in October. The copy in the mail was the one she could not stop. And that is what the mailbox was all those years. Not a habit, a system, free play offers, birthday coupons, anything with that casino's name on it. For 3 years she had been catching every piece of it at the box before I ever knew it existed. She could have shut that mail off, but free play is money to a gambler. And that mailbox had not failed her one single day in 3 years. And once I was watching, I started remembering the last few years in a way I did not enjoy. I remembered a day last spring when I grabbed the mail because I was already down at the road, and she met me at the front door with her hand out before I got up the steps. I remembered that she paid cash for everything, groceries, gas, her nails, and had for a couple of years, and when I once asked about it, she called it cash budgeting and said it kept her honest. I remembered her phone spending the night in her car about twice a month because she forgot it, and how she would go out at 10 at night in slippers to get it and come back 20 minutes later. And I remembered the Mondays, home by 10:30, warm to me, in a good mood, her coat smelling like an ashtray. She told me the restaurant had a fire pit on the patio. I need to stop and say this plainly because every man watching needs to hear it. None of that proves anything. Cash is cash. People forget phones, and restaurants do have fire pits. And I told myself every bit of it, one excuse at a time, for years. But an excuse will not cover a tax form. The jackpot in my glove box had her name, her rewards number, and a date she had looked me in the eye and lied about. And no fire pit explains that. I know what half of you are yelling at the screen right now. Follow her. I thought about it, but I am 56 and I drive a loud old diesel she has been riding in since our very first date, and she would spot it in any parking lot in the state in about 4 seconds. And if I was somehow wrong about all of it, then I would be the husband who tailed his own sick wife around town, and you do not come back from that either. So I did not follow her. In the last week of January, I hired a licensed private investigator. There it is. The letter came first, and the letter is why he got hired. Before anybody asks, everything this man did was legal, and my lawyer checked every bit of it later. He held a license in our state. Every photograph you're about to hear about was taken somewhere open to the public. A parking deck, a casino floor, a hotel lobby. Nobody touched her phone, nobody guessed a password, and nobody opened a single account of hers, because none of that was ever needed. He came out to the house one night while she was at a school thing with the boy, and at the desk in my den, I slid 3 things over to him: the tax form, the every other Monday schedule, and the one Saturday a month at her sister's. The first Monday, nothing. She really did meet 3 girlfriends at a chain restaurant off the interstate, and he sent me 1 photo of 4 women splitting a dessert, and I sat in my den that night feeling like the biggest jerk in the county. The second Monday was not nothing. She left the house at 5:40 and did not drive toward the restaurant. She got on the highway going south, drove 50 minutes, and turned in under a sign I had only ever seen on billboards: the casino, the same one from the return address. He photographed her walking in alone at 6:40 and photographed her walking out alone at 9:40, and she was home by 10:35, telling me the girls said hi. And I will tell you the truth about that night. Part of me was relieved. Alone meant no man. Alone meant my wife had a gambling problem. And as sick as that made me, a problem is something 2 people can sit down and deal with. By the weekend, I had half a speech written in my head about getting her help. I never gave that speech. 12 days later came the Saturday. It was her sister's Saturday, and it was also his weekend. Her ex-husband picked my stepson up that Friday night, right on time, same as always. Saturday, just before noon, my wife left with a casserole dish on the passenger seat because her sister supposedly had people coming over, and she told me not to wait up. She would probably stay the night and be back Sunday. The investigator picked her up at the end of our road. She drove straight past her sister's exit without touching the brakes. 50 minutes south, same sign, same parking deck. At 12:50, he photographed her walking the floor like she knew it by heart, straight to a blackjack table in the back corner, where a man was already sitting with chips stacked in front of 2 seats. He put his arm across the back of her chair, and she leaned into it. The investigator spent most of an hour working his way around that floor to get the face. The 6th photo had the face in it. I was standing in my garage when it came through on my phone, and I had to sit down on the bumper of the diesel. I knew the coat before I knew the face. It was the man who shakes my hand at my front door every other Friday, her ex-husband, the man whose gambling she carried a toddler out the door to get away from, sitting in a casino with my wife tucked under his arm. 10 years later, 100 handshakes, and my stepson, their son, was at his grandmother's house that whole afternoon, because that is where he got parked on those Saturdays while his mother and his father were at the tables. I know that from the boy himself. Grandma's house came up in his stories for years, and it never sounded like anything but Grandma's house. That boy thought those weekends were about him. The investigator stayed on them. At 6, they left the floor, and they did not leave the building. They walked to the elevators on the hotel side, and nobody stopped at the front desk. No check-in, no card at the counter. She already had a room key in her purse. The last photograph of the day is the 2 of them stepping into that elevator, and in it, my wife is laughing. Her car did not move until 10 the next morning, and she walked into my house at noon. carrying a clean casserole dish. When the investigator sat me down that week, he told me one more thing, and this is the one that put me right back down on that bumper. He said, "You are not paying for that room, and neither is he." I asked him what that was supposed to mean. He said, "Casinos rate you while you play, the card, the hours, the average bet, and when you lose enough, they start giving things back, so you will keep coming. Free meals first, then free nights." He said a room key already in her purse with no stop at the desk means the room was comped, and comped means earned, and earned means lost. That was his read, standing in a hotel lobby. Months later, the casino's own paperwork proved him right down to the night. My wife's losses were paying for the bed. The money sliding across that table was marital money, ours, and the casino thanked her for losing it by handing her and her ex-husband the room for free. This guy could not keep the lights on in their first marriage, and now he was sleeping for free on my wife's losses. Part of me wishes I could tell you I threw something. What I actually did was sit on that bumper until it got dark outside, and then I did the only smart thing I did all year. I called a divorce lawyer before I said one single word to my wife. The lawyer looked at the tax form and the photographs, and the first question out of her mouth surprised me. She asked how many years my wife had been carrying that rewards card. I told her I could not even guess. She smiled and said, "The casino knows, down to the day." That one question ended up deciding the whole case. 2 weeks crawled by before his next Friday came around. That Friday, before I had said anything to anyone, her ex-husband came to pick up my stepson. He stood at the bottom of my front steps and stuck out his hand, same as always. I had a stack of photographs with his face in them sitting out in the cab, 20 feet away. I took the handshake, I looked him in the eye, and he smiled at me like we were friends, because as far as he knew, I knew nothing. That handshake took more out of me than the whole divorce did. The boy waved at me from the back seat, and I waved back, and they drove off, and I stood there in the cold until the taillights were gone. Saturday afternoon, she told me the sister needed help painting a spare room, and she packed the overnight bag again. 2 sister Saturdays in 1 month, and a few weeks earlier, I would not have thought twice. Sunday, a little after 12, her car pulled in. I had the hall table set with exactly 2 things, the tax form unfolded flat, and the photographs face down in one stack, the same table she had sorted our mail on for 8 years. I heard her keys, and then I heard her stop in the doorway. Nobody said anything for what felt like a full minute. Then my wife, who had just spent another night in a comped hotel room with her ex-husband, looked at that tax form on my table and said 5 words. "You went through my mail." Not, "Who told you?" Not, "I can explain." The mail. I told her the flu got the mail this year, and then I turned the top photograph over to face her. Watching her face while she looked at that blackjack table was the closest thing to honesty I got out of her all day. Everything after that came out in pieces. First it was, "He is my son's father." We were only ever talking about the boy. Then it was, "Just one afternoon for old times," and nothing happened. For old times, or whatever that is supposed to mean. Then came the crying. And then finally, a version with some truth in it. "It has started last spring," she said. A coffee at a drop-off turned into lunch, and lunch turned into one afternoon at his favorite casino, just to see if she could sit in one of those chairs without her hands shaking. And she found out she could. She told me the October jackpot was the best she had felt in years, and she said that to my face, standing over the photographs like I was going to understand. I only asked her one thing, "How much?" She stared at the carpet and said, "Maybe 9 or 10,000 over everything." I filed for divorce that week, and she packed a bag for her sisters, which is the one time that cover story was actually true. I am not going to name my state, and I am not going to name the casino, but I will tell you in plain words what the law where I live says, because that law is how this story ends. When a judge here divides up what a married couple owns, the judge gets to look at why the marriage died, not just who earned what and whose name is on which account, why it died. Cheating counts against you, and wasting the marriage's money counts too. If one spouse threw money away while the marriage was coming apart, the judge can make that spouse's share smaller by every dollar of it. My lawyer's first move was not the photographs, it was a subpoena to the casino, because casinos keep score on everybody, every swipe of that rewards card, every session, every dollar in, and every dollar out. All of it sits in their computers, and once a year they will print it on one page, and that page is called a win-loss statement. Hers came back in 3 weeks, and it ended the argument before it started. The rewards account was opened 3 Octobers ago, not last spring, 3 years, and the weekend it was opened matched her lake house trip 3 falls back. I called the old college roommate myself, which is a phone call I do not recommend. She was kind, and she was confused, and then she was quiet, and then she told me my wife had not been to the lake house in 3 years. 3 trips, 3 cover stories, and the rewards account opened on the very first one. Then the bottom of the page, the net over 3 years, $61,400 lost. She had told me 9 or 10,000, and the casino's own computer said the real number was 6 times her confession. The subpoena also shook loose the hotel side of her file. 14 comped nights across those 3 years, every single one earned by her play, and each one landing on a weekend her son was parked at his grandmother's house. Her lawyer had one real argument, and it was the accounts. He stood up and said the gambling money was hers to lose. Separate pay, separate account, her name alone on the rewards card. My lawyer answered with one sentence I will be quoting until the day I die. She told the judge that a paycheck earned during a marriage belongs to the marriage, no matter whose name is on the account it hides in. The judge agreed, and then he did the thing my lawyer had told me the law here allows. He looked at why the marriage died, out loud, on the record. The affair was in front of him, with photographs, dates, and 14 free hotel nights. The $61,000 was in front of him, printed by the casino's own machine. And when the property got divided, it was nowhere near half and half. I kept the house, whole, in my name, no buyout, done. The $61,000 got treated as money she had already spent out of her share of this marriage, so the judge carved it out of her half, not mine. She walked out of that courtroom with her car, her own retirement, and a share so much smaller than what she had planned on that her lawyer called for a recess just to explain it to her, and nobody paid anybody a dime of support. There was one more paper in the case file I want to mention, because you could not write it any better. Early on, her side sent over a list of things she wanted held for her, and third, from the top, above the furniture, was, no joke, the points balance on her casino rewards card, $61,000 gone, her marriage on fire, and she wrote the casino points on the list. People ask me why I never went after him. In my state, there is nothing left to sue a man like that for. Those laws are long gone. And anyway, the tables are already doing a better job on him than any courtroom could. She moved in with him before the ink was dry. Same man, same habit, same house she carried a toddler out of 10 years ago. Her sister still talks to me, which should tell you where her own family came down on all of it. Last month, the sister told me the two of them are already fighting about money because he never really left the tables, and now neither one of them can stay away. My stepson is 12, and he still has my number. and he still uses it. He calls me about fishing mostly, and sometimes about nothing at all, and I pick up every time, even when it is late. Whatever his mother did, that boy did nothing, and there will be a rod with his name on it in my shed for as long as I am breathing. Me, I am still in the house. This past January, I walked down to the road and got my own mail out of my own mailbox every single day, and there was not one thing in it with a casino's name on it. Hers still mail her those forms every January, wherever she is. Every jackpot, printed and stamped and sent, year after year. And for the rest of her life, she is going to have to beat somebody to a mailbox. I will always say, never ever let someone make a fool out of you. See you in the next one.